The radical left's agendas are challenging American values, but conservatives like you haven't forgotten what this country was built on. My friends, the Heritage Foundation exists to make sure your voice is heard and to represent your values in the D.C. swamp. The Heritage Foundation stands for your values and won't give up the fight because they know you never will. Paid for by the Heritage Foundation.
He's here. He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. You know, it's very interesting, isn't it, how the modern-day media work, whether it's radio, cable, whatever it is. There's going to be a meeting, obviously, tomorrow, 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time in Alaska, near Anchorage, between Putin and President Trump. And so there's a lot of speculation about what will happen. The president has made abundantly clear what his intentions are. And so there are people out there who think I should spend all day talking to you, I guess, for the next 3 hours, Mr. Producer, about my assumptions about what's going to take place. Now, this is typical kind of news thinking these days. I have nothing new to tell you. I don't know what's going to happen in that meeting. Nobody knows what's going to happen in that meeting. We know the president has had his wits' end with Putin. He's also made it clear he just wants a peace deal, and he wants it now, and they can figure out the particulars later. We know from the White House that they're likely, if things go okay, to have a meal afterwards, and then after that, a press event. So the real news day is when, Mr. Producer? Tomorrow. When we actually know what's going on. Not today, tomorrow. But I thought in preparation for tomorrow, by the way, we have a big hour too, very big. At the bottom of the next hour. You know, yesterday was sort of governor's show on the program. We had 3 governors who wanted to come on the program, more than happy. They were news breaking. Governor of Alaska, governor of Texas, governor of Florida. I was also contacted by the Prime Minister of Israel. He wanted to address some issues, so we spoke to him earlier this morning because there's a 7-hour difference. And we spoke to him at 9 this morning, which would be 4 p.m. his time, as he's moving in between meetings, security meetings and so forth. Some very, very interesting things that he said. I would argue news-making things that he said, but who knows if the news picks it up or not. But we'll discuss that and play that next hour. That's news. But I want to lay the foundation a little bit here. How much do you know about Vladimir Putin? How much do you know about him? Isn't it amazing? We're told today that we need to spend time talking about this. Has anybody talked to you about who he is? How he came to power? What he used to do? That he's the richest man in the world? Has anybody discussed that with you? Well, I will, so you know what you're dealing with. Putin's been in power since 2000. That's 25 years. 25 years. He's 72 years old. So he's been in power since he was a young man. Do you know that's longer than any Kremlin leader? Any? Since Joseph Stalin, Mr. Producer? Longer than Brezhnev and all the rest? So you learned something just now I bet you haven't heard all day. Putin has been in power since 2000, longer than any Kremlin leader since Stalin. He's now in his 5th term. There's no effective opposition anymore. Why? Because he killed them all. He killed the journalists who were real journalists. He killed the oligarchs that raised questions or wouldn't give him his money, quote unquote. Political opponents, he killed them too. He has killed scores and scores of people, had them assassinated. Apparently the favorite is the swan dive out of the 29th floor of some building. But they've been shot in the back of the head, and they've claimed that that was suicide. Shot in the back of the head, and the family shot, or they've used a certain kind of poison that only the Russian government itself has access to. And they have killed people outside of Russia, inside Russia. Navalny they killed, who was one of the great opponents. First they tried to poison him in Germany. He came back to life. Then they put him in prison, first for 9 years, and then they extended it another 10 years. And he died in prison, of course. He's a killer. Now, early on, he seemed to embrace the so-called liberal democratic Russia. The liberal democratic Russia under Yeltsin. Remember Boris Yeltsin? Boris Yeltsin. Who was a true Democrat, small d Democrat. But he was a drunk, as many are in the leadership in Russia. He was a drunk. And members of his inner circle had committed all kinds of financial crimes and so forth. So there he is, Putin. He's in the inner circle, worked his way up very quickly, from St. Petersburg to Moscow, moved up the chain, positioned himself. He'd been a KGB agent, secret agent. Rose to the level of lieutenant colonel up until 1990, 1991, and so the Soviet Union collapsed. That's when he began his political career, really in 1996, St. Petersburg and then in Moscow. He was viewed as an earnest, loyal, honest individual, relatively quiet. He got to know people. They got to know him. He became one of the deputy prime ministers. They had several. Well, a handful. And then word has it, Yeltsin was ill and he was blackmailed. That's right. He was basically told, hey, look, Boris, all these issues will go away and you won't be charged with anything. Just hand power over to me, Putin. And he did. Some 25 years ago. This is how he came to power. But he was anything but a small d Democrat, as it turns out. Now, Putin is probably the richest man in the world. Elon Musk was asked about him several years ago. They said, you know, you're the richest man in the world, Elon Musk. And you know what he said? And I quote, I do think that Putin is significantly richer than me. And when asked to elaborate, he refused. He got tight-lipped, and he never said it again. So Putin is viewed as, if not the richest, but one of the richest men in the world. Why? 70% of the Russian economy is controlled by the Kremlin. 70%. He gets a cut of all of it. All of it. He insists he earns just $140,000 a year as president. That he lives modestly in an apartment in central Moscow, and he has few other assets. But he's a liar. He owns a fleet of luxury cars, dozens of private jets, palatial mega yachts, including one that's valued at $900 million, Mr. Producer, like yours. He's got extraordinary designer wardrobe. He's got millions of dollars worth of rare and high-end watches. Experts claim his real estate holdings, as reported by News.com Australia, are in the billions, including a castle-like mansion on the outskirts of Moscow that's twice the size of Buckingham Palace. Various holding companies and associates are used to launder and mask his ownership of high-priced areas of across the globe, including in the south of France and even New York City. I think he's even richer than Qatar. But his pride and joy, and you can see this online if you Google it, his pride and joy is a sprawling $1 billion, actually $2.08 billion, over $2 billion estate. Can you imagine that, Mr. Producer? Overlooking the Black Sea, boasting over a dozen bedrooms, actually dozens of bedrooms, a private nightclub in the house, in the estate, in the castle, a casino. Think of all the personnel. An underground ice hockey rink, a movie theater, a wine vineyard. It's an enormous property sitting on hundreds and hundreds of acres of manicured gardens, has been dubbed Putin's Palace by critics. Again, the worth is said to be over $2 billion. Putin denies it's his, but it's his. The American-British financier Bill Browder, co-founder of the investment firm Hermitage Capital, once invested heavily in Russia. Then he became a fierce critic of Putin. In an interview several years ago, he claimed the president's wealth is worth multiples of what he's claimed, multiples. He said the wealth came as a result of extortion and massive theft from state funds. At the time, this is 2018, he estimated Putin's net worth, real worth, at $200 billion American dollars, so it's at least double that now. Putin being targeted as the richest man in the world. Not even close. I've got more on Putin on this pre-Alaska meeting. We'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Folks, we're less than a year from the 250th birthday of our great nation. But sadly, far too many have forgotten what this country stands for. Why? Because they forgot or were never even taught how this country was founded, why it was founded, and who founded it. If we lose our heritage, we lose America. That's why the Heritage Foundation needs your help. They've created a resource not just to ensure that patriots like you don't forget about the American founding, but to equip Americans with the facts they've never learned in school. This resource, Why the American Founding Matters, explores the question of why it's so important to study the American founding and why the founding still matters today. Folks, don't wait. Get your free copy of this essay today at heritage.org/Levin, heritage.org/LEVIN. Now, included in this resource is a comprehensive timeline of the American founding from 1774 to 1800. You need to read it, folks, and so does everyone you know. So go to heritage.org/LEVIN now. That's heritage.org/LEVIN. Paid for by the Heritage Foundation. I'm going to get into what's been going on, not just in Ukraine, in other parts of Europe that border on Russia under Putin in a moment, but I want you to listen to these statistics. I want you to listen to this. This is from the Center for Strategic and International Studies. Now, these statistics are about 7 or 8 months old, so it's worse. Since January 2024, 7 months ago, Russia has lost roughly 1,149 armored fighting vehicles, 3,098 infantry fighting vehicles, 300 self-propelled artillery, and 1,865 tanks. Even more noteworthy, Russian equipment losses have been significantly higher than Ukrainian losses, varying between a ratio of 5-1 and 2-1 in Ukraine's favor. Russian fatalities and casualties have been extraordinary. Russia will likely hit the 1 million casualty mark in the summer of 2025. It's already hit it. 1 million casualties. A stunning and grisly milestone overall. A high of 250,000 Russian soldiers have died in Ukraine. 250,000. 250,000 in 3.5 years. We lost about 50,000 in North Korea. We lost almost 60,000 in Vietnam. Just think about these numbers. They've lost 250,000. With over 950,000 total Russian casualties, a sign of Putin's blatant disregard for his soldiers. To put these numbers into historic perspective, ready for this? Russia has suffered roughly 5 times as many fatalities in Ukraine as in all Russian and Soviet wars combined between the end of World War II and the start of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February 2022. In addition, Russian fatalities in Ukraine in just over 3 years are 15 times larger than the Soviet Union's decade-long war in Afghanistan and 10 times larger than Russia's 13 years of war in Chechnya. Is that stunning, Mr. Producer? Now, Ukrainian fatality rates are also high at between 60,000 and 100,000 Ukrainian soldiers killed. Still, that's not 250,000. And a total of 400,000 casualties, which include both killed and wounded. 400,000, which is probably closer to 450 to 500,000 today. And in the case of Russia, over 1 million. 1.5 million casualties. 1.5 million. With up to 500,000 killed of the 1.5 million. Again, I'm going to get into these different steps and timelines that have led to the invasion of Ukraine in February 2022. But before we do, this is why this book on power, I think, is so critical to understand. I just told you about Putin, his wealth, his power. He has literally murdered scores and scores, hundreds of people, like Stalin did. And he's been there 25 years. 25 years. This is why the founding of this nation is so fantastic. And this is why people who are pushing Marxism and Islamism must be rejected and must be fought. Because this is what happens. You could think about Xi, you could think about Un, you can think about the Middle East with the Islamists. You could think about Castro and Maduro and Noriega. These are killers. These are power-hungry people. And what separates them from us is our founding and power checking power, as my book explains. How many founding fathers can you name? I bet most Americans can't name more than 2 or 3. Folks, if we forget the founding our country's heritage, we risk losing our America as we know it. The Heritage Foundation needs your help, ensuring that the American founding and those who made it possible aren't forgotten. Their new resource, Why the American Founding Matters, explores why the American founding still matters in the 21st century and why it's so important that we study it. Without the unique principles that form the basis of our founding documents, the challenges of self-government, and the dedication vindication of our founding fathers. America as we know it could never have existed. So go to heritage.org/Levin, heritage.org/Levin. Get your copy of this important new essay from the Heritage Foundation, which includes a comprehensive timeline of the American founding from 1774 to 1800. There's too much at stake to not take action today, so please get your free copy at heritage.org/Levin today. That's heritage.org/Levin.
Mark Levin, the real American rebel. Call in now, 877-381-3811.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're on Vladimir Putin. You know, the State of the Union. You know how they talk like 2 days before, what's going to be in it, what's going to be on it, can you remember what was in the State of the Union? No, you can't. This is how modern news works. It's ridiculous. It doesn't work. That's why people don't like it. They turn it off. I'm telling you about Putin, the background about Putin. I can't tell you anything about what's going to happen tomorrow. Brother Brian Kilmeade, a very dear friend of mine, he interviewed President Trump. President Trump said, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. We'll see. The plan is, to have a meeting and see how that goes. If it goes well, then we'll eat. We'll have a press event, and then maybe we'll have another meeting down the road with Zelensky and so forth. Okay. But that doesn't require 3 hours to keep saying that, does it, Mr. Producer? So I don't play those games, and I'm not going to play those games. Period. I'm on the air almost 25 years for a reason. Other people screw things up. I don't screw things up. I know you. I know who you are. So let's start somewhere near the beginning. Ever hear of the Orange Revolution? No, not that. The Orange Revolution. Ukraine was long part of the Soviet Union, but it became independent in 1991 like all the other captive nations. There are about 15 of them. It is geographically located between Russia and the rest of Europe. In 2004, Viktor Yanukovych, a pro-Russian candidate, won the election for president of Ukraine. But the election was known to be fraudulent because Putin interfered in it. Interfered with it. So this led to the people rising up called the Orange Revolution. Massive protest, which in turn led to another election. This time, a pro-Western candidate, Viktor Yushchenko. He won. Putin was furious. And he declared this second election a farce. Now, while this is going on at the same time, Putin is sending his militia into the Donbass area, eastern Ukraine. They're not wearing Russian uniforms, but he sent them in there to try and foment a war, but also to try and cause eastern Ukraine to separate from the rest of Ukraine. Now, this was the Orange Revolution that I'm talking about. There's more. In 1991, also, Georgia became independent from the collapsing Soviet Union and allied with the West. In 2008, South Ossetia, part of Georgia, was trying to break away from Georgia. Russia sent troops in to support the rebels. A war broke out between Russia and Georgia, which, of course, Russia quickly won. The result, South Ossetia, was recognized as its own country by Russia. So it took about a third of Georgia. It was trying to consume and devour about 20-25% of Ukraine, all on its western border. There was no pushback from the international community, none. Then there's Crimea. You've heard of Crimea. In 2014, Putin was emboldened. Remember, Ukrainian President Yanukovych, this was the guy that was supposed to be pro-Western. Well, he was poised to sign an agreement with the European Union, formalizing an alliance with Europe. Not NATO, but with Europe economically. But he got cold feet and he backed out. Somebody got to him. So the public in Ukraine became furious with his reversal. He was ousted as president and he fled to Russia. Putin had gotten to him. In 2014, then, Putin invaded Crimea. Crimea, which is Ukrainian territory. And he annexed it. It's strategically very, very important. Essentially sits in the Black Sea. There was no effective pushback. So there he is, trying to take eastern Ukraine. There he is. He took 25-30% of Georgia. There he is. He took 100% of Crimea, which was Ukrainian. And then he puts almost 200,000 soldiers on the border with Ukraine in 2022. And this is where everybody said he'll never invade, he'll never invade. And this is where Biden said, well, if he takes a little land, it's okay. It triggered a full-scale invasion of Ukraine, as you know. So Putin used Russia paramilitary and covert military involvement in the Donbas region of eastern Ukraine, which led to not a full-scale war, but a war in 2014. And then 8 years later, February 2022, he launched this massive military invasion into Ukraine. He declared it a special military operation. He claimed Ukraine was controlled by neo-Nazis who were threatening Russia. He claimed that he was coming to the defense of the Russian population in eastern Ukraine. This time the world did condemn it, as you well know. I have a document in front of me from 2021 that I've discussed with you in the years past by Vladimir Putin. Obviously, somebody else wrote it for him, but he wanted it written for him, on the historical unity of Russians and Ukrainians, where he's making the case on why Ukraine is actually Russian and all the Russian-speaking people there. The ancient Russian language actually pervaded most of Europe, as a matter of fact. And in this document, he talks about Poland, Romania, Lithuania, and other European countries that he felt really are Russian. And he's making the case, really, that all of these areas are Russian, and Ukraine is part of, quote-unquote, the Russian motherland. And his goal was to cut through Ukraine. You may have heard of this other country, and then seize back parts of Poland, he said, and Romania, NATO countries. I didn't say it, he said it. And by the way, in 2024, when he was giving a speech again for his next presidential candidacy, you know, they go through the motions, what I call these Potemkin democracies. He repeated it. You know, we ought to listen to these people, him, Xi, Iran. It's not like they're hiding what they want to do. This is why I wrote this book on power. Everywhere you look, whether it's internally here in the United States, whether it's overseas, whether it's in your private activities. Let's say some program director said, you know, we want to know what Mark's going to do today. And, you know, not only that, but we need him to do X, Y, Z, A, B, C. See, that's a power move. And not a very wise one. Just an example. In your own lives, you have situations like that, perhaps. This is why I want you to read this book. You're going to be more informed than anybody else. Remember we talked about Montesquieu? How important he was to the people who wrote our Constitution and ratified it? He was the most widely read and cited philosopher during America's constitutional period. He's referred to many times in the Federalist Papers. In The Spirit of the Laws, his great book. He explained that, quote, democracy and aristocracy are not free states by their nature. Political liberty is found only in moderate governments. But it is not always in moderate states. It is present only when power is not abused. But it has eternally been observed that any man who has power is led to abuse it. He continues until he finds limits. This is Putin, is it not? He said, who would think it? Even virtue has need of limits. So that one cannot abuse power, power must check power by the arrangement of things. That sentence resonated with the people who wrote your Constitution and created this republic, which would be completely rejected by a Putin. He said a constitution could be such that no one will be constrained to do the things the law does not oblige him to do, or be kept from doing the things the law permits him to do. Montesquieu further warned that should the distinct nature of the branches of government, the three branches, dissolve and transition from separation of powers to the concentration of powers, the result would be tyranny. You have tyranny throughout Russia, a brutal, genocidal tyranny. He said, when legislative power is united with executive power in a single person or in a single body of the magistracy, there's no liberty, because one can fear that the same monarch, in this case Putin, or Senate, that makes tyrannical laws will execute them tyrannically. Look how brilliant this man was 500 to 600 years ago. Nor is there liberty if the power of judging is not separate from the legislative power and from the executive power. If it were joined to legislative power, the power over life and liberty of the citizens would be arbitrary, for the judge would be the legislator. If we're joined to executive power, the judge could have the force of an oppressor. All would be lost if the same man or the same body of principal men, either of nobles or of the people, exercise these three powers, that of making the laws, that of executing public resolutions, and that of judging the crimes or the disputes of individuals. And notice, too, Montesquieu's observation that tyranny is not unique solely to despots, but it also to be feared in the form of groups and bodies and mobs, even legislatures. So there you have it. If you really want to understand Putin, if you really want to understand what's going on in the world, if you really want to understand what it is that makes this country ours so different and why we need to defend it from the Mamdanis and the rest, a very deep understanding of it, but a very easy read is in the book on power. If you want to understand Putin, well, he's a dictator. No. If you really want to understand it, and then you understand when Trump's going into negotiations, what all this means, it really is an important thing to understand. It really is. We'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Folks, we're less than a year from the 250th birthday of our great nation. But sadly, far too many have forgotten what this country stands for. Why? Because they forgot or were never even taught how this country was founded, why it was founded, and who founded it. If we lose our heritage, we lose America. That's why the Heritage Foundation needs your help. They've created a resource not just to ensure that patriots like you don't forget about the American founding, but to equip Americans with the facts they've never learned in school. This resource, Why the American Founding Matters, explores the question of why it's so important to study the American founding and why the founding still matters today. Folks, don't wait. Get your free copy of this essay today at heritage.org/Levin, heritage.org/LEVIN. Now, included in this resource is a comprehensive timeline of the American founding from 1774 to 1800. You need to read it, folks, and so does everyone you know. So go to heritage.org/LEVIN now. That's heritage.org/LEVIN. Paid for by the Heritage Foundation. Yellow. We have a treat for you next hour, an exclusive one-on-one interview with the Prime Minister of Israel. He's talking about a lot of very interesting and crucial subjects. Gaza. Things he discussed I never heard before. He addresses anti-Semitism. It addresses many other things. Now, I think it'll probably be pushed aside as news, given what's going on tomorrow. Even though today there's been no real news about what's going on tomorrow. How could there be? But I think you'll find it interesting nonetheless. I certainly did. Mr. Producer did. I think you will too. Again, I want to thank all of you who've acquired your copies of On Power. I know a lot of you have not. You can get it at Amazon.com, any major retail store, Books A Million, Barnes & Noble, Sam's, Walmart. It's there. You can even get it at the airport at Hudson. And I know you're going to love this book, and you'll probably cut through it in 2 or 3 days or sooner. Even if you highlight it and dog-ear it, and many of you will, I know. You're going to love it. We'll be right back. This segment of the podcast is exclusively sponsored by Pure Talk. Pure Talk offers great coverage and can save your family money on your wireless bill every single month. Go to puretalk.com to find the plan that's right for you. Thank you again for listening, and thank you so much for this sponsorship, Pure Talk.
He's here. He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, America. Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. Bottom of the hour. A real treat. Benjamin Netanyahu, exclusive discussion about a number of issues that aren't normally discussed, that the press normally doesn't ask. President Trump was in the Oval Office today taking questions. He's talking about Social Security, the 90th anniversary, the things they're doing to try and strengthen it, try and preserve it. And they're off to a great start. This guy, he's appointed as the commissioner. This guy's like he's like the Rain Man of numbers and so forth. He's very, very impressive. And there were a lot of people, I mean hundreds of thousands of people, who were getting checks. Somebody was getting checks, not them, who were 120 years and older. About 125 to 175,000, I forget the number, who were 160 and older. Now, we've talked about that several months ago. I mean, that's complete fraud. And then illegal aliens. So they've actually removed millions of people from Social Security who are not supposed to receive it or who are dead, and somebody else is receiving it, but illegal aliens and others. That saves billions and billions of dollars for the program. And they also mentioned there was $18 billion that needed to be accounted for, and that this gentleman, the commissioner, he could account for $9 billion of it, and he's only been there 100 days. This is the difference. This is the difference. It's a great difference, too. But, of course, the president also, the federal city, under our Constitution, Washington, D.C., well, he's federalized the police force, which is federal anyway, quite frankly, backed up by the National Guard. They're in the streets 24/7 now, and they're arresting criminals. And they've arrested now hundreds of them over the course of the last 3 nights and days. And a lot of people are pretty damn happy about it. But the Democrats call him a dictator. Now, this is very interesting, what they think a dictator is. They know they're liars. They know what they're doing. But he's following the Constitution. And, you know, about 3/4 of the cases, I believe I mentioned this last night, doesn't matter, of these lower courts that ruled against the president all during the first 6 months, about 3/4 of those cases that have gone on appeal have been reversed by the appellate courts, as I told you they would be. Some of them are still going to go to the Supreme Court. Some of these lower courts are still defying the appellate courts and the Supreme Court because they're lawless. Excuse me. They're lawless. So he's following the Constitution. They're not, because they don't believe in it. They don't believe in it. And so they call him a dictator. Well, he addressed this today. Cut 7, Mr. Producer. Cut 7. Go.
The biggest issue right now, and an issue that's really taken hold, is crime, stopping crime in the cities. And the Democrats are fighting the stopping of crime. So I think that's like men playing in women's sports is okay, or transgender for everybody okay. But this is a bigger issue. This is the biggest of all issues. Crime is rampant in D.C. It's rampant in our generally blue-run cities. And they've got to do something about it, or they're never going to win another election. And instead of calling me a dictator, they like to say Trump's a dictator. Trump's a dictator. Well, I had calls from many, many friends, including Democrats. I have a lot of Democrat friends, but they're normal people. And they were thanking me so much for what I'm doing in D.C. They feel so safe already.
But listen to these Democrats. They stand with the criminals. They stand with the terrorists, Hamas. Think about this, America. They stand with the illegal aliens. They don't stand for you. They don't stand for America. Now, it should be easy to defeat these people, given what they stand for. The growing Islamist, Marxist, anti-Semitic movement within the Democrat Party. They stand with the criminals. They stand with the illegal aliens. It's incredible, really. Charles Allen is a D.C. city councilman in Washington, D.C., and he was on CNN today, and here's what he had to say. Cut 3, go.
Well, we need to be able to call out the lie where it is, and that's just simply not true. He continues to say it, but it is not true. He's painted this dystopian vision, and it just doesn't track with the facts on the ground. Over the last 2 years, we have driven crime down by about 50%.
Now, unfortunately, the Constipated News Network did not push back, did not explain that they've been cooking the books there. You've got people now on the record, the former police chief, you have a commander who's been charged with cooking the books. They've been cooking the books. They don't want the people in D.C. to know that it is bad as they think it is. And so they're lying. They're lying about violent crime, including murder, in D.C. D.C. is an extremely dangerous city. It's more dangerous than most third world cities. And you've heard people say if it were a state, it would be the most crime-ridden state in the country. And at night, people don't walk around the monuments where they used to. They don't walk around the White House, even though there's 4 billion Secret Service and Park Police there, because it's not safe. They don't walk in the area of the convention center, which was all refurbished and gentrified, because you're not safe anywhere, even around the Capitol building, where people have been stabbed and shot to death, including an intern about a month ago, which doesn't get the attention it needs and deserves. So the president's trying to fix it. He's trying to clean up the capital city. He and Congress have unique control over that city, unlike the other cities. That's the federal city. It was carved out of Maryland and Virginia. They gave the land back to Virginia. And I've said here on this microphone over the decades, 2 decades, if people in D.C. want to vote, then that city should go back to Maryland, where they can have 2 states and a representative, but certainly not their own senators and representative. That was never in the cards, not ever. But look how they conduct themselves. They want federal money as much as they can get, and they get huge amounts of subsidies from the federal government, and yet they want complete control over the federal city that houses all 3 branches of government. Not going to happen. Not under this president, but the Democrats would love to do it. Of course, they love to do everything that's stupid. So this guy, Charles Allen, is a moron. Then you got this idiot, Dan Goldman from New York. Really, this guy's complete lowlife, comes out of the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Southern District. It just shows you. You can have truly stupid lawyers come out of that office, too. Cut 2, Mr. Producer, go.
The militarization of our cities and our domestic law.
The militarization of our cities. They come up with the phraseology. They fearmonger. They want you to believe that we're under the iron fist of a dictator who follows the Constitution, who follows the rule of law. He's been upheld. More of these lower courts have been reversed. He's got lawyers in the White House and lawyers at the Department of Justice in the Office of Legal Counsel. That's where the brain trust is. Who are telling him what he can and cannot do. He's complying with what he can do. This is what he's allowed to do, free to do, should do as part of his oath. And these Democrats, fascist, dictator. Same Democrats that actually back fascists and dictators like Mamdani. Go ahead.
It's the Posse Comitatus law. And
he didn't violate the Posse Comitatus law. How did he violate it? He's declared an emergency. The Posse Comitatus law means that you can use, if you get the proper signatures under the proper circumstances, military personnel to bring law and order. And that's been done before. In Los Angeles and elsewhere, Reagan used it. George H.W. Bush used it. George W. Bush used it. But Trump doesn't have to use it. Does anybody know why he doesn't have to use it here? Mr. Producer, do you know why? It's the federal city. The other cities aren't federal cities. So this guy's an idiot. Congress passed the statute. It's the statute the president is using to trigger a 30-day emergency where he's able to federalize the police, back them up with the National Guard, and they're looking into extending it. But in the meantime, they're working hard to deal with this. So you have a city that's corrupt, that lies about its statistics, that's dangerous, where the people are being maimed and murdered, where our Capitol buildings are, where our government, all three branches are. The president says, I got to deal with this, and they call him a dictator. Sick. Very sick. This guy, Harry Enton, the CNN chief data analyst at CNN today, Americans overwhelmingly prefer Trump's approach to crime to Biden's. Well, of course, because Biden's approach to crime isn't an approach to crime at all. It's to do almost nothing. Cut 4, go.
Yeah, okay. I think this sort of gives the game away here because Donald Trump is like Air Jordan towering over Joe Biden when it comes to their handling of crime. Look, in 2024, look at where Biden's net approval was on crime. Way underwater there at minus 26 points. It was one of Biden's worst issues. Granted, pretty much every issue was one of Biden's worst issues. And again, look at where Donald Trump is. Way above
this guy's
Joe
the
Biden.
Best guy on CNN. Best guy on CNN. Go ahead.
27 points. So Americans vastly prefer Donald Trump's approach to crime than they did to Joe Biden's. And again, I think it gets back to the point that Americans are far more hawkish on crime than a lot of Democrats want to admit.
Mm-hmm. Hawkish on the border and deporting illegal aliens. By the way, everybody's favorite podcaster, Joe Rogan. Folks, it's not personal. I just call him as I see him. It's okay. He does too. We all do. He's a liberal. He backed Bernie Sanders. He backed Donald Trump for one election. Now he has swung back to being a liberal. And more than once now, he's condemned the president. He's condemned ICE for deporting illegal aliens. Now, I don't need to get into this subject. We talk about it all the time. It's a very crucial subject. But the guy doesn't comprehend it. He just uses the usual pablum of the left. Who's going to be your landscaper? And what kind of comment is that? What kind of stereotype is that? You know, some people might say that's bigoted. I'm not going to say that because people say it all the time. I don't think it is, but some might. Who's going to landscape your house? Who are the landscapers? You know, here's the other thing. The American people work damn hard. And you can come in on work visas. You can come in on tourist visas, student visas. My wife taught me this. She's an expert on this. There's scores of visas that are handed out there. If you really need landscapers, you can do it legally. But these are illegal aliens. And guess what? 10, 20 million illegal aliens came in, and most of them are not landscapers, Joe. Most of them are not janitors, Joe. It's moronic to say these things. It's moronic. Here's a montage, short montage, of media admits D.C. crime is out of control. You'll hear S.E. Cupp, who used to be a conservative, now she's a lefty at CNN. You'll hear Chris Matthews, remember him? Brought him back from the dead. And then Ellie Honig, who I believe is a lawyer, at CNN. Cut 5, go.
I can't tell you how profoundly stupid it is for Democrats to get up with their facts and their figures and their charts and their graphs and say, look, you're safe. Can't you read this chart, idiots? Why are you complaining? I'm showing you right here how safe you are, so shut up and move along. I don't have to tell you how profoundly stupid that is because voters told you how profoundly stupid that was in 2024.
You can't keep saying violent crime is down, but the murder rate's up. To the average person, the murder rate's about life and death. You don't brag about a rising murder rate. And the Democrats are, I agree with you, Mika, they're falling into the trap of defending what's indefensible.
It's a trap.
I've worked extensively with police, and I don't have a problem tactically with what Donald Trump is doing here. He doesn't have to be the most dangerous place on earth. Something can be improving, but still really bad. If your house is on fire and then a third of the fire goes out, it's less bad, but it could still be an emergency. I work in D.C. It is dangerous there. You cannot deny that.
Anybody who actually lives there and works there knows how dangerous it is. Unless they have private security and all that, it is an extremely dangerous city, particularly at dusk and dawn. But even now, they're so brazen. The gangs are so brazen. It is an extremely dangerous city. That's why they're lying about their statistics. You can look at the news stories in the last 7 days. They lay it out. And Trump's actually doing something about it. That's what's so great about this man. He just rejects the liberal propaganda and narrative. It's not reality. It's not reality, no matter how many times they repeat it. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
How many times have you told someone, if it ain't broke, don't fix it? Now, that's great advice for most things, but not so much for a cell phone. See, over time, the battery life fades, the processor can't keep up, and it's fallen in the toilet perhaps one too many times. Fortunately, thanks to Pure Talk, your cell phone is something you can replace without feeling guilty. When you switch to Pure Talk this month, they're going to give you a Samsung Galaxy A36 for free with a $35 qualifying plan. Wow, just $35 a month for talk, text, and data, and a free Samsung phone, the scratch-resistant Gorilla Glass, and a battery that lasts all day. All on America's most dependable 5G network. Look, supporting companies like Pure Talk is a really good thing. You win by cutting your cell phone bill in half. They win by hiring more Americans and helping more veterans. Make the switch in as little as 10 minutes. Go to puretalk.com/Levin. That's puretalk.com/LEVIN to get your free phone today. Again, that's puretalk.com/LEVIN. Switch to my wireless company, America's wireless company, Pure Talk. It's a very short segment. After the segment, you're going to hear the exclusive one-on-one interview with Benjamin Netanyahu. And after we air it, we will distribute it, including putting it on our social sites and elsewhere. But I think you'll find it very, very interesting. It's not just about Israel. It's about a number of things. Benjamin Netanyahu and I will be right back. How many times have you told someone, if it ain't broke, don't fix it? Now, that's great advice for most things, but not so much for a cell phone. See, over time, the battery life fades, the processor can't keep up, and it's fallen in the toilet perhaps one too many times. Fortunately, thanks to Pure Talk, your cell phone is something you can replace without feeling guilty. When you switch to Pure Talk this month, they're going to give you a Samsung Galaxy A36 for free with a $35 qualifying plan. Wow, just $35 a month for talk, text, and data, and a free Samsung phone, the scratch-resistant Gorilla Glass, and a battery that lasts all day. all on America's most dependable 5G network. Look, supporting companies like Pure Talk is a really good thing. You win by cutting your cell phone bill in half. They win by hiring more Americans and helping more veterans. Make the switch in as little as 10 minutes. Go to puretalk.com/Levin. That's puretalk.com/Levin to get your free phone today. Again, that's puretalk.com/Levin. Switch to my wireless company, America's wireless company, Pure Talk. It's my honor to have the Prime Minister of the State of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, with us. Mr. Prime Minister, how are you, sir?
I'm fine. Thank you. I hope you are, too.
I'm doing great. I wanted to talk to you, Mr. Prime Minister, about a number of things that are going on because there is a ton of attacks on the State of Israel in the media, by the UN, really by the left, in your own country and throughout the world. And I want to get some facts on the table here so millions of Americans can really digest this and understand. And by the way, the vast majority of America backs the State of Israel, period. But I wanted to talk about this growing anti-Semitism, Hamas, how they have an influence in the media, how they put these lies out about genocide and casualties and all the rest while they're starving hostages and so forth. Give me your take on this.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, this is a campaign of vilification and lies that is perpetrated by Hamas, but it's given tailwind by various NGOs, the same people who do Antifa and these other incredible anti-American protests. It's funded by Qatar and by Iran and perhaps by other powers in the world, and certainly by NGOs like the Soros Foundation and others that you know. So they're sort of ganging up on Israel. They're not only ganging up in the field, and we had to fight the Iran terror axis of which Hamas is a part, and it's led by Iran, but it's also the battle for truth and the puncturing of lies that they put forward on Israel. Israel doesn't seek to occupy Gaza, seeks to free Gaza from Hamas terrorism and tyranny. And guess what? A lot of Gazans are now joining us and saying, finally, we have a chance to fight Hamas and to free ourselves from their savagery. So that's the first fact. Hamas' goal is genocide. It's not governance. Hamas isn't fighting for freedom. It's fighting to repeat the horrific October 7th massacre again and again and again. And I remind your audience that they came in on October 7th unprovoked, murdered and beheaded our men, raped and murdered our women, burnt our babies, and took over 250 hostages, grandmothers and grandchildren, Holocaust survivors, you name it. I mean, monsters, literal monsters. And of course, we're rolling them back. And no nation would live with a genocidal army a stone's throw from its citizens, and neither will Israel, neither would America.
It seems like whispered down the lane here, but they're not whispering. The media, they all report the same thing. I mean, these Hamas casualty numbers, you had to deal with that first. They were absolute flat-out lies, and Hamas basically admitted it. And you've had experts all over the world saying those numbers are false, and they keep repeating them. Then they create the false scenario that your government is intentionally trying to starve the Palestinians in Gaza when everybody knows it's Hamas. I mean, it's very difficult to respond to this. And then you have these so-called European leaders saying, yeah, and this proves we need a two-state solution. How do you fight this sort of worldwide propaganda that's taking place?
Well, I think the best way to fight it is first to win the war and win it as speedily as possible, because that eliminates the attention to these lies. But I think beyond that, you have to tell the facts. A lie can circle the globe 10 times before the truth has a chance to raise its head. But that's what I'm trying to do now. Look, in fact, from day one, we had the opposite of a starvation policy. We had the policy of giving the civilian population all the food and medical aid, and we've brought in, now hear this, we brought in 1.9 million tons of aid. That's nearly 2 million tons. That's roughly 1 ton of aid for every man, woman, and child in Gaza. That's beyond belief. Okay? Just a few months ago, we encountered the problem that Hamas was stealing the aid. Israel flows in the aid, Hamas steals it. They steal it, by the way, with armed people. They shoot anyone who opposes it. They take over the trucks, take the bulk of the aid, the lion's share, for themselves, and then sell the leftovers at exorbitant prices to the Palestinians they proclaim they support. And they'd come to a Palestinian mother and say, "Oh, you want a sack of flour? Okay, give me your 14-year-old child." And that's how they replenish their ranks of terrorists whom we knocked out. So that's what it is. It's a war machine that is used, that is maintained by stealing the aid. When we face this problem, we try to overcome this by basically having an indirect route, or rather a route that goes around the Hamas thievery, with American companies supplying directly the food to the population. Hamas interdicted that too. And as a result, we had this deprivation. Not the hunger that they described and all that, not the starvation, rather, that they described. And so we're going around that too. We're airlifting, the Israeli Air Force is airlifting supplies to dropping supplies of food, medical care to the civilian population in Gaza. We have safe routes, designated safe routes in which trucks can go without being, pounced upon by Hamas. And we're going to double, triple, even quadruple the number of safe distribution points. That's what we're doing. It's a humanitarian surge. And as a result, we've pretty much closed the gap. We've got hundreds of trucks going into Gaza every day, even though the UN largely refuses to cooperate with us, and they want to pile tons and tons and tons of aid that we let go into Gaza, and they remain on the Gaza side of the border because the UN doesn't want to distribute it, but we're overcoming it. So the first lie is that there's a starvation policy on our part. If there were, 2 years into the war, there wouldn't be any Gazans alive. 2 million Gazans would be dead, and of course they're not, because we don't have such a policy. I'll say the only ones who are undergoing a starvation policy in Gaza are our hostages. And you saw these photographs of these hostages the other day. I'm emaciated, to the point of complete collapse. And you see their captors next to them, corpulent, to the point where the American ambassador in Israel, Governor Huckabee, he said, what the Hamas captors and Hamas terrorists need is not food. They have plenty of it. What they need are Ozempic shots because they're corpulent. So that's the truth. And that's one of the big lies that they level at Israel, and it's horrific that people actually believe this.
Yeah, and their leaders are billionaires and millionaires. It's really quite remarkable, isn't it? Now, let me ask you this. This so-called two-state solution, and they pretend the Palestinian state will fix everything. And you've pointed out before, they had a Palestinian state, and they used it as a terrorist state. I don't think the West comprehends, in many respects, at least on the left, what's actually taking place, so they don't care. I mean, when the slaughter was taking place in Syria, over 500,000 people dead, mostly Muslims, and the slaughter's taking place in Yemen, Muslim against Muslim, about 250,000 people, and the slaughter's taking place on the continent of Africa, where the Islamists are killing the Christians, or the communist Chinese are killing the Uyghurs, you don't hear anything from Western leaders, or almost nothing, or the United Nations. So this kind of hypocrisy really is brings it to the fore. Why the focus always on Israel, Mr. Prime Minister?
Well, I think there's latent anti-Semitism here, and there's a sort of ganging up of all these anti-American forces who, all these people who march on the campuses against Israel. They don't only burn Israeli flags, they burn American flags. And Hamas in Iran, and the Houthis in Yemen, and the Hezbollah in Lebanon, all the enemies who try to destroy Israel, what do they chant? They chant death to Israel, death to America, in that order, because they think that if they'll destroy Israel, no one will stop them from taking over the Middle East. No one will stop Iran from developing their ballistic missiles that could reach deep into Western Europe and ultimately into the United States. And no one will prevent them from developing nuclear warheads with which they could blackmail every American city. So their goal is really the United States. They hate America. They hate the free society that has been established in the United States and in Israel, and they want to destroy our way of life and bring back the world to a dark tyranny of the early Middle Ages. That's what they're about. They're savage. I mean, it's not only the way they massacred us. Look at the way these fanatic Islamists also massacred the Kurds, or rather the Druze, a non-Arab sect in Syria. They did exactly the same thing they did to us. They even had a case, which I saw. I mean, you have to see it. It's so revolting and shocking. But I'll tell it to your audience anyway. Okay, so a Druze civilian is lying on the ground, wounded, and this Islamist fanatic comes in with a knife, tears his chest apart, pulls out his heart, and eats it. And the man, there are a few seconds with the man before he's dead, and he has his heart torn and eaten alive while in his last moments. I mean, it's horrific. This is pure savagery. It's barbarism. And Israel is on the front line fighting this barbarism, fighting to defend our common civilization against the barbarians, and it is Israel that is being attacked. Israel is being attacked for genocide. Mark, if we had practiced genocide, we could have finished and leveled Gaza in one afternoon. We could have done, the Dresden bombing on them, but we don't, because that's not the way we conduct war. And in fact, we've done what no army has done. I mean, we send millions of text messages to the Palestinian civilians and tell them, get out of harm's way, get out of this neighborhood, because we're coming after the Hamas terrorists who have embedded themselves in your homes, in your schools, in your mosques. We send them millions of phone calls. We actually phone call them and we tell them, get out. And Hamas stands at the gate of these neighborhoods and shoots anyone of these Palestinians who want to get out. And then they accuse us of genocide. And of course, many of them did get out, thank God. And then we go after the terrorists. And when we go after the terrorists, guess what happens? So now the neighborhood is clear of civilians. It's full of Hamas, and Hamas booby traps just about every single building in that neighborhood. And what we do is we bring in an old APC, armored personnel carrier, with a couple of tons of explosives. We detonate it. It sets off all the booby traps, and so the houses collapse. We do the same with the terror tunnels that they've built. They didn't build Gaza up with all the billions that they received from the international community over the years. They built down a terror city, an underground city, where they, gang up with where they put our hostages in these underground dungeons, and they also fight from underground. So we explode these tunnels, and we make sure our hostages aren't there. And the tunnels are under buildings too. So those buildings collapse too. That's why you see the level of physical destruction. It's not the destruction leveled by our air power that comes in and levels the buildings. It's after we clear the area from Hamas terrorists and then detonate all the booby traps. That's when these things happen. So Israel is doing things that no army has done. And that's why the ratio of combatants to non-combatants in this dense urban area, 50 meters underground and 50 meters above ground, is one of the lowest in the history of modern urban warfare. Colonel John Spencer of West Point, in charge of urban warfare studies, says that he's never seen any army go to such lengths to prevent civilian casualties, even though we have the firepower to just eliminate everyone. And we don't do that. And we take our own casualties in the process. So Israel is given a bum rap. The only ones who have an open and practical declared policy of genocide is Hamas. And they openly declare, our goal is to conduct the October 7th massacre again and again and again. Our goal is to eliminate the Jewish people and the Jewish state. Annihilation, extermination. That's a genocidal force. And I'm very glad that we have a friend in the White House, President Trump, who sees things clearly, who knows the truth, and he proclaims it, proudly, unabashedly. He says, Hamas is the guilty party. Hamas has to go. Hamas can't remain in Gaza. Gaza has to be free to have a real future. Well, we fully agree with that.
And, we should know this in the United States. I mean, 9/11 wasn't an accident. And if they could do 9/11 again, they would. The president is trying to deport people from this country who are a threat to our country, who come from your part of the world. Last question. The hostages, you have been negotiating through others to try and get the hostages out. You've had to deal with Qatar, which has funded Hamas. I don't know what kind of mediators those are, but that's kind of been imposed on you. I mean, people keep saying, we need to get the hostages out. I feel like you and Dermer and the others have tried to do everything you can. Witkoff, our president, has tried to do everything. And finally, they wash their hands and they say, we're dealing with terrorists. They're not going to give them back.
Well, remember that we were able to get 205 hostages out, of which 148 are alive, out of 255. So, first of all, we got the great majority out, but we still have 20 live ones and 30 deceased ones, and we're trying to get them out. And we found that the only thing that gets them out is military pressure, nothing else, because Hamas doesn't understand. Well, we'll bring all of them out. That's my goal. But at the same time, my goal is to eliminate Hamas and give Gazans and Israelis a better future. And let me tell you one other thing. I mean, this is a wider war. This is a war against the Iran terror axis, it's a seven-front war. And this war is against the people who want to eliminate the United States. Hamas, or rather Iran, which leads the charge. What do they chant? Death to America. They tried twice to assassinate Donald Trump, the president of the United States of America. They burnt your embassies. They've killed and wounded thousands of American soldiers, servicemen in Iraq and Afghanistan with their IED explosives. They just go. They killed 241 Marines in Beirut. They and their proxies. They hate America. They want to kill America, and we're the ones fighting them. And I find it amazing that there are people, I think well-intentioned people, but maybe misinformed Americans, who say, well, Israel is the guilty party, and we have to side with Iran and with Hamas, and they apologize for them. They've completely gone astray. They've lost their bearings. Anyone who's pro-American can't be anti-Israeli. Anyone who's pro-American can't be pro-Hamas and pro-Iran. Anyone who's pro-American can't be for those people who wanted to murder President Trump. That's not being pro-American, that's being anti-American. And let me tell you this, Israel is preventing the wider war. And when President Trump joined me and joined Israel in sending those B-2s in that magnificent action, people said, oh, you're going to be drawn in by Israel, by me, into a third world war. You're going to have American soldiers with boots on the ground trying to do regime change in Iran. Nonsense. You see how inane and how stupid those statements were. In fact, we were able to achieve a stunning victory over, the chief perpetrator, Iran, and this gives America, and it gives Israel, and it gives the Middle East a better future. And I think President Trump should be congratulated for doing this thing, for seeing where the right side of history is, and for being there, and for changing history. And I'm sure that the great majority of Americans know the facts. So I appreciate the opportunity you've given me to speak the facts and to puncture the lies. Thank you.
It's a great honor always, Mr. Prime Minister. Our best to you and the people of Israel from the American people, and I know our president, too. God bless you, sir. Be safe.
Thank you, and God bless America.
Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, from the Prime Minister of Israel, cutting through all the static and the lies and the propaganda of the Western media, the Democrat Party, and the phony extremist so-called influencers in the Republican Party. Those are the facts. We'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
How many times have you told someone, if it ain't broke, don't fix it? Now, that's great advice for most things, but not so much for a cell phone. See, over time, the battery life fades, the processor can't keep up, and it's fallen in the toilet perhaps one too many times. Fortunately, thanks to Pure Talk, your cell phone is something you can replace without feeling guilty. When you switch to Pure Talk this month, they're going to give you a Samsung Galaxy A36 for free with a $35 qualifying plan. Wow, just $35 a month for talk, text, and data, and a free Samsung phone, the scratch-resistant Gorilla Glass, and a battery that lasts all day. All on America's most dependable 5G network. Look, supporting companies like Pure Talk is a really good thing. You win by cutting your cell phone bill in half. They win by hiring more Americans and helping more veterans. Make the switch in as little as 10 minutes. Go to puretalk.com/Levin. That's puretalk.com/Levin to get your free phone today. Again, that's puretalk.com/Levin. Switch to my wireless company, America's wireless company, Pure Talk. So I think you'll agree, Prime Minister Netanyahu there was very, very open, very forthright. He's a brilliant man, is he not? He knows what's going on in and outside his country. And he and I went to the same high school. He was 7 years my senior as his brother. The late Yanni also went to my high school. His father taught in college in Philadelphia for a short period of time, but his English is superb. He also went to MIT. He's a brilliant man. He also fought and was wounded. And I say his brother was killed in Entebbe as he was leading the forces there. A very accomplished man, a remarkable man. You can see where he and Donald Trump would be such close friends, I think, because these are both very, very historic figures. And you see this throughout history. Thatcher and Reagan, John Paul II. Here you have Trump and Netanyahu and so forth. And you also see the reprobates and the malcontents and the miscreants who try to come between them as they tried to come between Reagan and Thatcher and so forth. It's not going to work. We'll be right back.
He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, America. Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. Oh, yeah. So we have this guy. New York Post calls him the D.C. sandwich slinger. And you might say, what's the big deal? He threw a sandwich at National Guardsmen. Now, this wasn't just any sandwich. Did you see this, Mr. Producer, in the New York Post? It almost looked like a brick, didn't it? And as they write here, does Ryan King, a D.C. dimwit who slung a Subway sandwich, well, that explains that. It must have been a meatball sandwich, at a federal agent on the streets of the Capitol earlier this week, had been identified as a now former Justice Department worker. Is it amazing? Justice Department worker. Attorney General Pam Bondi announced today that Sean Charles Dunn, Sean Charles Dunn, 37, who is facing a felony assault charge for the sandwich strike, has been fired from the DOJ. It's good to know. Perfectly good sandwich. If you touch any law enforcement officer, we will come after you, she declared. I just learned that this defendant worked at the Department of Justice. No longer. Not only is he fired, he's been charged with a felony. I mean, it looked like a brick when he was throwing it, but it was a Subway sandwich. Subway. It's an example of the deep state we have been up against for 7 months as we work to refocus DOJ. She said, you will not work in this administration while disrespecting our government and law enforcement. Now, Dunn worked as an international affairs specialist in the Justice Department's criminal division, which handles cases of fugitives abroad and helps foreign countries on extradition matters with their own fugitives. Dunn appeared to have been similar to a paralegal, assisting attorneys in handling a large volume of cases, including the litigation of those matters, according to DOJ's job listing for the position. He doesn't appear to be an attorney. An attorney for the suspect did not immediately respond to requests. What do you think? Was it a meatball sandwich, a pastrami sandwich? What do you think he threw at him, Mr. Producer? A meatball footlong, you think? Was it premeditated, do you think? Dunn was allegedly caught on camera, wasn't allegedly, there it is on video, berating a group of federal officers as fascists. Believe this guy's at the Department of Justice. Before lobbing his deli sandwich and hitting a U.S. Customs and Border Protection agent in the chest. F you, fascists. Why are you here? I don't want you in my city. Dunn allegedly fumed within inches of the officer's face. According to the complaint, Dunn successfully attempted to flee on foot, telling a local cop while he was being processed, I did it. I threw a sandwich. And there's the Subway right there in the picture. Perfectly good sandwich. But he hit the guy hard. I mean, it wasn't like, let me say this. It wasn't a bologna sandwich, on white. Bologna on white or peanut butter and jelly. So, no, this was a heavy-duty sandwich. He must have gotten a heavy sandwich with all the works. I'm just guessing. And by the way, you don't even have to throw anything. If you get in somebody's face and they anticipate that you're going to assault them and you're a federal officer, I read this on Fox the other day, ICE officers and others, that can be a felony too. Because you're trying to intimidate, you're obstructing, you're trying to prevent this federal official from doing what the federal official is supposed to do. Now, footage of the incident went viral against the backdrop of President Trump's deployment of hundreds. In any event, this guy, but you never know with these D.C. judges. You never know with these D.C. judges. He'll think it's a joke. Yeah, threw a sandwich. Oh, what's the big deal? He slung a sandwich. It is a big deal. Good for them. Throw the book at him. Better yet, throw the sandwich at him, Mr. Producer. Now, we have over at the American Thinker, another great site, M. Walter, Comey's last move, spying on a president, setting the trap, lying about it. Comey, we've always detested him. We always knew he was a sleazeball. But he's worse than we ever dreamed, this guy. Thus far, Comey's activities have been largely confined to his duties, however corrupt within the FBI, writes M. Walter, or inward looking. From January 2017 onward, his activities became dramatically darker, arguably illegal, more forward-looking. On January 5, 2017, a bit more than 2 weeks before Trump's inauguration, Obama met with Biden, Comey, Brennan, Clapper, Rice, and Yates. Comey did not disclose this meeting to Congress. When asked about how many times he met with Obama, twice, he said under oath. It's actually 3 times. Should throw this guy, charge this guy. This omission is a tell as to how sensitive discussions were in the now infamous meeting, that Obama meeting. The very next day, January 6th, Comey went up to New York to tell Trump about the salacious and unverified material in the dossier. And I would argue at this point he had to know that it wasn't correct, that it was a plant. This was the first time Comey had met Trump, and he had a goal. We know his goal was to launch the dossier portion of the scheme. His meeting with the president-elect was the news hook they needed to get the dossier and the legacy in media bloodstream, and within hours it was everywhere. Even while Comey was briefing Trump on the garbage dossier, his malign machinations were about to bear fruit elsewhere. From Fox, FBI Director James Comey considered an anti-Trump dossier compiled by a former British intelligence officer so important that he insisted the document be included in a January 6th final intelligence community report on Russia meddling in the U.S. election. So this guy's a scumbag. He had to know that it was crap. He certainly did. News of the dossier had to compete with the release of the much-anticipated ICA release the same day. The report that Obama had commissioned was released on January 6th. It had concluded that Putin and the Russian government aspired to help President-elect Trump's election when possible by discrediting Secretary Clinton. All lies. All lies. Dossier was complete garbage, and we now know from the recently declassified Durham Annex that Hillary was a much richer mark for an old KGB manipulator like Vladimir Putin, and it goes on. So this guy Comey, I like this Alcatraz. What are they calling again? Alcatraz, what is it? Alligator Alcatraz? Federal judge is trying to take it over now, trying to undermine it. He'll be overturned too, like so many of the others are. But maybe Guantanamo Bay, this is where these people should go. They say equal justice, nobody's above the law. Okay, then we'll send you out there. These are hideous people. Absolutely hideous people. We'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
It's always a pleasure to have my buddy, my brother, Sid Rosenberg on. Big hit in New York, WABC #1 morning show. That's a big deal. Very, very dear friend. So, Sid, I want you to give us a briefing, the nation, if you will, on what's the status of that mayoral race with the Marxist, Islamist, Jew hater, Sliwa. Adams looks like he really ought to drop out, and Cuomo. What do you see there?
Well, first of all, you say these nice things about me, and you mean it. I want your audience to know Mark means it. He's the nicest person ever, okay? Sorry, Sean, he's right there with you. But really, the honor is mine. I mean, you are, in my opinion, the greatest at this ever. So thank you for the kind words, but I'm the one who's honored to be on your show tonight. And I can tell you this, right now, Mark Levin, you'll appreciate this. I'm in a very fancy place in the borough of Staten Island, New York. Now, I'm in a private room so I can do this conversation. But right outside the doors, there's about 200 people, and there's a young councilman named Frank Morano. He used to do a radio show at WABC.
I remember that, yeah.
You know him, he won a city council seat. But also here tonight is the aforementioned Curtis Sliwa. So Curtis and I do a lot together. He's on my morning show about 3 days a week. He remains my enthusiastic choice for mayor of New York City. I did have Mayor Eric Adams on the program yesterday. I did have lunch with Andrew Cuomo last week. But the truth is, right now, Mark, gun to my head, and I hate saying this, because I do think Curtis has a legitimate chance to win. I really do. But gun to my head, right now, tonight, who's the next mayor of New York City? I hate to say it, the terrorist, socialist, communist, Marxist, Mamdani.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, that's possible. See, I do want to be careful. I don't want to encourage people to stay home, and I understand your point totally. But he's definitely in the lead. He's in the lead by a lot. But I was looking at the polling numbers, and they can be off, Sid, but I was looking at them. If you add up Cuomo, Adams, and Sliwa, they're pretty much the same number as him, which is why they really, in my view, need to get behind one of them. But I don't think anybody's going to drop out, do you?
No, you just nailed it. And I asked Mayor Adams that yesterday, and he's not going to lie to me. Look, the truth is, Mark, he's the incumbent, okay? He's got a lot of money coming in. All the real estate money, for example, that left Andrew Cuomo, it's going to Eric Adams. So he's banking cash right now, okay? On top of that, if he does lose, so what? Odds are President Trump will give him a job. So I don't see Mayor Adams backing out. Again, he's the incumbent. He's got money coming in. Curtis Sliwa's not backing out. He's the only Republican in the race. He's the only guy, Mark, who's actually surging in the polls. So he's not backing out. The only question remains Andrew Cuomo. Now, Cuomo is in second place, and he's been in second place the whole way, right? He got over 400,000 votes in the primary. He still lost by 13 points, but he got over 400,000 votes. So he's formidable. But the truth is, there's no real path to victory. And a lot of his money has left him and gone to Adams and Curtis. So he's the wild card. Will Andrew Cuomo stay in? I still think he does. I had lunch with Cuomo 2 weeks ago, and he said, why would I drop out? I'm in second place. I'm the only guy right now, less than 10 points behind Mamdani. So all that long-winded answer to your question, Mark Levin, was no. Realistically, despite the clamoring and the yelling, everybody needs to unite, get together. No one is dropping out, not anytime soon, certainly not till long after Labor Day.
Now, this weasel, this Mamdani, by the way, he won't come on my show, and I guess he won't come on your show?
Oh, I don't want him. Listen.
Oh, I want him. I want a piece of him. I got to be honest with you.
Listen, you're better than I am at that. Let's be honest, Mark. I mean, you're better. I actually, I draw the line at certain people. I know it sounds crazy. I've had Cuomo on. I've had Adams on. But when you get to the point where I think you're a real scumbag, like a real degenerate piece of garbage who hates the Jewish people, who hates this country, who hates our dear friend President Trump, I don't want you. So, for example, I never tried to get Joe Biden. I never tried to get Kamala Harris. I don't want any part of Kathy Hochul, and I want no part of Mamdani. So I'll talk to the other three, and if he wins, trust me, I got a lot of power. That morning show is 4 hours every morning. I will do the best I can to make that bastard's life miserable every morning.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting. In his case, I'd love to have him on, but he's not going to come on.
No.
He's a propagandist.
No.
and he's an inch deep. For instance, I have some basic questions to ask him, like exactly how you're going to run this grocery store, who's going to work there, how you're going to price the food, how you're going to buy the food, what kind of food. I mean, there's 1,000 different questions I have just about basic stuff. It's not so easy to run a grocery store, you know?
It doesn't matter. You know, look, you're on WABC right now 2 hours a night, and New Yorkers love you. Just so you know, your audience, New Yorkers love Mark Levin. And we've got the same boss, John Katzimatidis. Mm-hmm. And guess what? He owns grocery stores. He owns Christie's and DiAgostino's in New York. And he has threatened to actually go out of business if Mamdani wins. But the truth is, Mark, it doesn't matter what he says. You know, he has come up with all these ideas. He has very little legislative authority to do any of it. Maybe 5% of what he's talking about he can actually do. But guess what he does well? He hates Jews. And I know I can't believe I'm saying this, Mark, but in New York City, where I was born, bar mitzvahed, and I thought this was the safest place on the earth for Jews next to Israel, in New York City right now, hating Jews is cool. It's chic. So forget about all of his ideas with supermarkets and bankrupting. If you hate Jews in New York, you're a popular... I know you can't believe this, Mark, right? You're a popular figure. That's how scary this is right now.
That is so strange. So strange, because obviously the Jewish population is significant. I guess, you know, there's a huge Jewish population in South Florida. I guess a lot of these folks are going to be moving out of New York and populating Florida.
Both of those populations, Mark, I hate to tell you, they're not Jews like Mark Levin, okay?
No. In South Florida, where the Orthodox Jews have moved, many of them, just like Brooklyn, they're actually quite conservative there. They're DeSantis supporters and Trump supporters down there. I can't speak for the whole state.
No, they're down there, but Miami Beach is not. Just, you know, Miami Beach
not Miami Beach, north of Miami.
Yeah. North of Miami, correct. But all these Jews in New York...
You used to live there, right? I forgot.
I lived in Boca Raton for 16 years.
Yeah, a lot of it's changed now.
I worked in Miami every day.
A lot of it's changed.
But I know it has. But they're not like us, Mark. They don't like us. The Jewish people in New York, believe it or not, don't like people like you and I.
Oh, they hate me.
They don't like you because you go to Israel and you speak at jns.org, and I go to Israel and I care about Israel. They don't like us. They care about their homes in Hicks Hills and Deal and Cherry Hill. They care about their Saturday morning Shabbat breakfast on the Fifth Avenue Synagogue. They don't like Jews like Mark Levin and Sid Rosenberg. The strong Jews, the ones that'll make sure 1,000 years from now we're still around. They don't like us.
All right, my brother. Strong American Jews, because a lot of these people don't support our country either. It's very disconcerting. Sid, keep it up, baby. Fantastic show, fantastic friend. God bless you, man.
Hey, On Power is great. I love you, Mark Levin. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sid. On Power. Sid likes my book. There you are. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin, America's real influencer. Dial in 877-381-3811.
Oh, yeah. I realize what follows will be dismissed or castigated by certain partisans and fanatics. But that's to be expected, since my observations involve them. And they are not laudatory. Truth, among the most dangerous domestic menaces to present-day America is the Democrat Party. It is a political institution that exists for the purpose of agitating for, and in fact, breaching the Constitution's firewalls in pursuit of the ever-elusive earthly utopia. It is home to, among others, a conglomeration of Marxist, socialist, and Islamist ideologues and activists. Of course, this is not to say that the majority of its membership shares these ideologies. However, the majority of its membership does not rule the party. I say this not as hyperbole for partisan political purposes, but as an everyday witness, with functioning eyes and ears, reading and hearing the daily barrage of declarations and promises about the fundamental transformation of America and the dogged assault on America's foundations by its academics, Democrat Party apparatchiks, and surrogates. Indeed, unlike reform, the fundamental transformation which they speak of which they speak is the wholesale transmutation of the nation's character and traditions. Moreover, the extensive written history of the cunningly named progressive movement unapologetically declares its purposes, as does its modern progeny in a flood of essays, books, and speeches to fundamentally transform our country. It is a force and presence in the United States, as it is in all Western democracies, albeit operating under different party and official nomenclatures, where truly enlightened progress is met with regressive and primitive ideological forces hailed as modern and futuristic, thus tearing down the barriers to centralized decision-making and governmental power and diminishing individual freedom to re-engineer society and indeed mankind are essential objectives, if not the epitome of both soft negative power and negative power. This is precisely why the early progressive intellectuals in America in the late 1800s and early 1900s, including future Democrat President Woodrow Wilson, relentlessly and furiously assailed both the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, especially separation of powers and federalism. Wilson wrote about the need for a living and breathing Constitution and insisted it be understood with an allegory to the human body. How, Wilson asked, can a person live if his organs are constantly working against each other rather than in harmony? In other words, separation of powers, the heart of the Constitution, is as deadly to America as the separation of organs in the human body would be, he argued. Moreover, Wilson and his progressive contemporaries argued that successive generations are not bound by the decisions and doctrines of the past, and we need not adhere to them any more than the authors of the Declaration and Constitution were bound by those who preceded them. We are free to do as we wish, just as they were, he said, and we need not worship them or what they wrote. Excuse me. Wilson and his ilk argued for a sinister revolution, indeed launched that revolution, in which intellectual elites and self-appointed experts, through a ruling class of like-minded manipulators and schemers, social engineers and contrivers, would employ the institutionalities of the unelected and non-representative parts of the federal government and further empower them in service to the cause of the so-called new progressivism, that is a form of European totalitarianism that I previously termed American Marxism. In this way, the Constitution could be altered, if not bypassed, with a top-down imposition of life-altering directives, regulations, and ultimatums to accomplish their ends. The will of the people, through actual representative bodies, is to be adhered to only when convenient and aligned with the ruling class's causes and goals. Otherwise, it is to be circumvented, killed through delay and atrophy, or where feasible, simply ignored. And it goes on. Those of you who have the book on power, that's in there. Those of you who don't have it, it's still in there. But you don't have it, and I want you to have it. I really want you to read it. Very much. How am I doing, Mr. Producer? Okay. Let's take a couple of calls here. Kevin, Washington, D.C., XM Satellite. Kevin, how are you?
I'm doing well, my friend.
Go right ahead, brother.
Now,
yes.
You know, I am an OW, original Washingtonian.
You're the
I remember Washington before we had home rule. I remember Washington after.
Wait a minute, is this my buddy, Kevin?
This is your buddy, Kevin.
How are you, brother? Go right ahead. It's good to see you the other day.
Brother?
Good.
It was good to see you as well and see the wife.
Thank you.
Mark.
Yes.
These police officers, these rank and file police officers, I've talked to them. These guys are overworked. A lot of them quit after the summer of 2020 because the politicians tied their hands. By God, if they have to use deadly force, they're more scared for their careers and how the politicians will throw them to the wolves than the daggone criminals. The crimes are reclassified. The youth are running the streets, stealing everything from cell phones. If you live in Washington, D.C. proper and try to go to the grocery store, you have to get you're tied from behind a locked vessel. Okay, grocery stores are closing. People are basically shoplifting in the stores, and guess what? The stores are told not to do anything. They literally walk in, load up a cart, and walk out the front door.
It's crazy.
And the security stands there with their hands in their pockets.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone says the crime is going down.
Not today. That's why it's so important what Trump's doing, no?
And guess what? Other than the paid AstroTurf that's showing up, a lot of the citizens of Washington have been welcoming this. They've been praying for it for decades. These kids are out of control.
Yeah, no, I agree. Oh. Kevin, love you, buddy. Keep calling. We appreciate you. That's Kevin, who was at Project 21 for a very, very long time. Just a great guy. Great guy. I want you to listen to something. Former CARE Florida director. CARE, Council on, the hell is it? Islamic Relations. And, of course, we know it's Hamas front group. They were caught in a sting operation by the FBI in the Marriott Hotel outside of the Philadelphia International Airport. These guys are a front for Hamas, which is a terrorist organization. They're free to operate in our country. They claim to be the largest Muslim civil rights organization. That's pretty funny, don't you think? Here's the former Florida director, Hassan Shibli. Listen, last Thursday, on Blood Brothers Podcast. Blood Brothers Podcast, whatever the hell that is. Cut 11, nice and loud. Go.
We need to be driven by divine guidance and loyalty to push the country for the better. I'll be very candid. I say this. I'm going to say it. I'm sure right now Memory and the Islamophobe websites are going to take this clip and blast it. They've already done it for one of my khutbahs recently.
Who knows? I might just do it.
Hey, my guy.
No, right, so they're laughing knowing that what they're about to say. Memory is a fantastic site, MEMRI. I've told you before you should bookmark that site. They already know what they say is vile, it's poisonous, it's cancerous. But they're laughing, oh, somebody will play it. Well, now Levin's playing it. Got it? Go ahead.
Brother, ultimately I say this, what excuse do we have as Muslims living in the United States or even the UK or Australia or any of these so-called Western nations and paying tax dollars that are funding genocide? The only excuse we have to do that is if we're living there to change the countries for the better. The number one priority we have must be dawah. It must be calling people to understand their creator, because when people understand their creator, it will change how they deal with their creation. That's number one. So I think number one is building the faith and the confidence within Muslims. Number two, dawah. And then number three, politics. Now they're going to twist this. Oh, they're trying to take over. I'm not trying to take over. We're trying to make America more representative of the ideals it espouses, like compassion, humanity, and mercy.
No, you're trying to take over, you jackass. That's what CARE's all about. You're trying to infiltrate. You're trying to take over. That's what you're doing. Oh, they're going to call us. I love the way they identify what they're doing and then pretend they're not doing it. But these are very evil people. That's their intention. And they're caught, and they're happy they're caught because they figure there's no consequence for this. We got judges who will protect us. We've got Democrats who will protect us. We got academics who will protect us. We even have isolationist podcasters who will protect us. And so it's okay. Come into this country, talk about overthrowing the country, talk about trying to change the country, adherence to your own faith, which of course is not how this country is supposed to work, adherence to their faith or any faith. And yet it was founded on the Judeo-Christian faith system. And this is what drives people nuts, Islamists nuts, and this guy's an Islamist. He's not quote-unquote a Muslim. He's an Islamist. And this is the problem now. People are invited into this country who have these attitudes or were. They get some kind of legal protection. They have judges protecting them because the West is weak. As I write in On Power, we have in so-called democracies or republics, in our case, the seeds of our own destruction. And people like this, they know how to seize on it. They know how to exploit it. They know how to use it. And they're chuckling. They're laughing the whole way. They're compassionate, don't you know? When you think of Islamists, don't you think of compassion, Mr. Producer? Yes, of course. So that's the former CARE Florida director, Hassan Shibli. He's a laugh a minute, that guy. But don't worry, even though he's the former CARE Florida director, there's plenty behind him. They got all kinds of chapters. They're just out there working so hard, compassionately, don't you know? Disgusting. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
We're going to be leaving soon. I hope you'll take the opportunity to go to Amazon.com and order your copy. Very well discounted, under $20 of On Power. Those of you who purchased it, thank you for making it number one on the New York Times bestseller list. If you happen to be going to a retail store tonight, particularly on the West Coast, or over the course of the weekend and so forth, they have copies, plentiful. And they should be right there. If you're traveling, Hudson and others at the airports have it, and the train stations too. So it's there for you. You can read it while you're traveling. You can read it around the pool or at the beach. You're going to love the book. The responses have been great. You can go on Amazon and read them as well. Let's go to Mike, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, on the Mark Levin app. Mike, congratulations. The Steelers got a quarterback. Go right ahead, please.
Yes, they did. Thank you, sir, for taking my call.
Thank you.
I've been listening to you explain a lot of this power, and I understand it. I see it all the time with the Marxists, the radical Islamists, and just the leftists in general. They always amass and consolidate power. But what I don't understand, second only to God, like God giving us life, the next greatest gift was free will. And I would never attempt to take anyone's free will. Like Netanyahu said, these people hate freedom. I don't understand that. Can you please help me understand what's in these people's psyche that makes them want to control people and take away their freedom? I don't get it. I cannot relate to it.
I know, but if you really think about world history, America is the exception. Athens is the exception. Rome, the first half of the Rome when it was a republic before it was an empire, is the exception. Britain was an exception for a long period of time. And if you read the Bible, whether it's the Torah or the New Testament, if you look at human nature, if you look in the Enlightenment, they all know that man is imperfect. They all know that man has a dark side. And that's why the nation's founding is so critical. And I have this in the book On Power, which is we recognize that each of us, we're sovereign. And as a civil society community, the community is sovereign. We're in charge. That said, we have certain rights that are given to us by God. And nobody can vote for them. No democracy gives it to us. No ruling class gives it to us. No government. No other human beings give it to us. But we need to use positive power, power in a way that secures those rights, and power in a way that prevents the negative, the dark side of humanity, what I call negative power, from devouring our positive rights. And so that's really what the book is about, fundamentally. And so I'll tell you what, don't hang up. We're going to get your full name and address. Just because I'm out of time, I'd like to explain it more, but I can't. I'll send you a copy of the book. I want you to read it, though. And after you read it, I want you to call me back. I want all you folks to read this book. Maybe your library has it. Maybe a friend has it. They can lend it to you if you don't want to spend the $20. I got it. Otherwise, you really ought to take a look at it. I want to thank you very, very much, folks. We salute our armed forces, police officers, firefighters, emergency personnel, you National Guard out there, you too, our truckers, our brothers and sisters in Ukraine. Good luck tomorrow. Our brothers and sisters in Israel, and you, the American people. I love you. God bless you. Thank you. And I'll see you tomorrow.